Hey there, crafty friends. Thank you for joining me again. I'm going to create an interactive layout today using one of my favorite collections of all times, The Timepiece by Bo Bunny. I know it's not a very new collection, but it is one of my favorites and I'm still using it for a lot of projects. So I'm going to start by creating a brick pattern with modeling paste on my layout. We already have a very nice door on the paper, so I'm adding bricks with my Prima stencil. I'm going to do it in sections because this stencil is a little bit small, and if I want to move it from place to place on my paper, then I don't want to smear the pattern that I've already created. So I'm doing it by sections, and I'm going to dry it with my heat tool after I'm done, and then move on to the next section. Adding more modeling paste. I'm going to use my heat tool now. After it's dry, I can move on to my next stage and create more bricks on another part of the paper. I'm creating it around the door, excuse me, around the outer part of the door. I basically want to create a wall, a brick wall on my paper. Adding a little bit more modeling paste. And every time I'm drying it, it's very important to dry it completely and thoroughly, because for our next step, when we start to add color, we don't want the modeling paste to smear, so we have to have it completely dry. So even if it takes a few minutes, be patient and dry everything thoroughly. My last section of bricks. And after everything will be dry, we can start adding color. My first layer is going to be with sprays. I'm using Lindy Stamp Gang sprays, and I'm working in stages here too, doing the first layer and absorbing the excess with tissue paper, and then doing the next layer of color with some more sprays. A little bit more sprays. Make sure everything is dried with your heat tool. Now I'm taking distress ink, vintage photo in distress ink, and my blender, my blending tool, and adding color on the bricks and around the paper so everything will blend really nicely. The sprays give the paper such a nice shimmer, so the ink blends with the shimmer and it comes out really nice. Just add more and more brown. Also adding some brown around the paper and the edges of the paper. Also going to use a little bit of fired brick distress ink. It's very strong red, so I'm first adding some color to a tissue paper to get rid of the strong color. Just have a very little red on my foam, and then I'm doing it on the paper. Now I'm going to cut out my windows. These are going to be our interactive elements on the layout. We're going to create shutters that open and close on the layout. I really like to play with interactive elements. Makes the layout more fun and more interesting because you get to be a part of the story and you get to discover what's going on the layout by turning things or opening and closing them. You have pockets, you have all kinds of interactive options, and it makes scrapbooking a lot of fun, both to the one who creates it and the one who later looks at it. So I'm cutting out all my windows, and I'm going to cut the shutters, but not completely, just on the bottom, the top, and the middle, and I'm leaving the sides uncut so I can create a folding line that will enable the shutters to open and close. It's sort of a hinge. Now we have an open and close shutters. We're going to create hinges or folding lines on the other two windows, cutting them completely in half and folding them out. We're going to adhere that little fold onto the paper with double-sided tape. This sorry, this way it will be really strong, because sometimes when you use liquid glue and it runs to the sides or you put too much, then it can interfere with the movement of whatever interactive element you put. So whenever I create interactive elements, I like to use dry double-sided adhesive. So I'm starting to assemble my windows, just putting a strip of double-sided tape on the fold I created. And now you have windows that open and close. Now we're going to add the second window. I'm going to add squares of paper as the background of the windows. Now for this window, first we have to insert the photo, and then we'll add the background. So I'm using photos of my kids sitting down because I want to put the images on the windows and make them look like they're sitting on the edge of the window with their legs down. So I'm just cutting like so. It's the first one. Just have to find photos of whoever you want to put in your window, and just find a photo that they're sitting down. It doesn't matter what's on the background because you're cutting the image anyway, so it doesn't really matter where they sit as long as you can see the whole body. And then you have to resize your photo so it will fit the size of the window. You can do it in whatever graphic software that you have, like Photoshop or something like that. And another photo I'm using is of the both of them standing. So this will be the photo for our third window, and it will look like they're standing at the window. I have to cut their legs a little bit. So now I'm going to first glue my photo on the back of the window, and then I'm going to add the background on the back. Make sure that when you add the background, you glue it in a way where the pattern that you want will face outside. And that window is ready. We can glue it to our layout. Now we'll add the other two photos. Opening and closing the window with our kids, with my kids peeping out of there. I'm going to add some chipboard, wooden chipboard embellishments. First, going to add some color to it with some alcohol inks. Using gold and copper alcohol inks. And some rust, so we'll have a lot of color. And for my flowers, using the cloudy blue alcohol ink. and the rest, which is kind of a reddish, really like this color, kind of a reddish brown color for the flowers. And for all the leaves and the stems, I'm going to use green distress ink. I'm just taking the foam without the blending tool so I have more control, and adding the green color to my embellishment. And I'm also adding some color, some vintage photo distress ink to my fence. Have a few flowers here, Prima flowers, that I'm going to add to my layout. First, I'm adding the fence. And the wooden embellishment flower. And then I'll start building, adding clusters of flowers to the layout. After all, if this is a house, then it must have a nice garden full of flowers outside. Using different flowers. And adding them in clusters to the layout. I'm using aqua and gray and peach and olive green flowers. You can never have too many flowers, so I'm adding a few more. And even a few more. Now for my little bicycle. I love these bicycle. Also white wooden elements, embellishments. Now I'm adding tree branch. It's also from Prima, and the bird cage with the bird outside of the cage, of course. I never want the bird to be in the cage. I always want it to be free. Adding some blue distress ink to the bird cage and some green. And I'm going to hang the bird cage on my branch and onto the page. Just moving it to the spot I want. Now I'm going to add some leaves. I really like the texture of the Prima leaves, but they're way too big. So I'm cutting the big leaves into small leaves. So this way I control the size of the leaves, but I still have the texture. So I'm enjoying both worlds, the size and the texture. So I'm adding the leaves to my branch. It's very easy for somebody who has small fingers like me. If you need tweezers, then you can use tweezers. Going to add another color of leaves. First I'm going to add the bird. Outside of the cage. And now we're going to add sort of a gray green color of leaves. I'm also cutting them to smaller leaves. And adding to my branch, my tree branch. I have a lot of texture on this layout and fun interactive elements. So it's a really fun layout. And we're done. Thank you very much for watching. And I hope you'll join me next time.